You with the one and only Wilder Hater, aka Boxing Guru, for Under the Microscope, Episode 2, Danny Swift Garcia versus Ivan Redkach. In my opinion, I think this is an excellent fight for Danny Garcia at this point of his career. Danny been in some tough fights against the top echelon at 147 pounds. Lately against my boy Sean Showtime Porter and Keith One-Time Thurman. So this fight against Ivan is a very important and critical fight because this is going to propel him into his major cash-out day on pay-per-view against Earl the Truth Spence Jr., in my opinion. Ivan is a perfect opponent for Danny because he's tall, he's a southpaw, and he's kind of flat on his feet. So it's a good comparison so he can get ready for Earl Spence later in 2020. In my opinion, this is going to be a perfect fight so Danny can work on his arsenal. As far as his movement, in my opinion, I think Danny needs to be a little more limber, especially in this fight because he's fighting Ivan Redkach, who moved up from 135 pounds. So Ivan should be the faster twitch fighter, in my opinion, if he uses correctly. Against Devin Alexander, the fight that Ivan won in his 147-day pro debut, I thought he stayed too flat-footed for Devin. I want him to use his gifts, moving a little bit, for coming up in the lighter weights, to make Danny has to, shift his power to a little different, so that can make the fight stretch out a little longer for him. And he can sneak punches in between Danny's big shots, his lunging left hooks, and when he has to place his feet together. So Ivan has to use that correctly to win this fight or to stretch it out longer so he won't get knocked out, because Danny does have power. So Ivan have to be aware of that. And plus, Danny been fighting at 147 pounds longer. But for Danny, I like this fight because Danny can work on a lot of things. Danny don't have to load up on punches. He can work on placement punches. He can work on basic positioning, because that's going to be major when he fights Earl Spence, because Earl is big and Earl is about positioning and cutting off the ring on you. So Danny definitely going to have to work together on this fight. And I believe he's looking ahead for him to fight Earl later this year. So this is definitely a good fight. Danny deserved this type of fight just to get him prepared because, like I said, at this point of his career, he can go from being a king to a pawn on the board at this stage in boxing for Danny Garcia. So I'm looking forward to this fight and see how it plays out. These are very important and key details only the boxing guru, aka Wilder, can give you. We're going to take a deeper look at Under the Microscope, starting with Danny Garcia. This is the fight between Danny Garcia and Zab Judah. If you look carefully, Zab is a southpaw. If you watch how Zab is circling, it's throwing Danny Garcia off position because Danny is very heavy on his feet. That's why I said he needs to practice on being limber, because that's going to play a major part in this fight against Ivan Redkach, and especially if he's successful and he fight Earl Spence later in 2020. Zab is circling him, and that'll nullify Danny's punching, and he can't never sit down on his punches and get the full power that he's looking for. That's why he needs to set it up with his jab or right hand to the body, and he can turn while Zab is trying to spin out with his left hook. So Danny has to work on his fundamentals to be successful in this fight. If I was Ivan Redkach's coach, I would have him using this game plan, because Ivan is taller and he can counter Danny off his jab and stay away from Danny's powerful right hand. And by the time Danny about to turn to his left hook, Ivan can be out of there. So Ivan got to use this tactic to his best to see if it'll be effective against Danny. I think it will be. Because look, Danny is having trouble getting off. Zab is using the ring. Beautiful. Zab is just a little shorter fighter than Ivan. That's why he's not really landing effectively. But in my opinion, Ivan is long and so is Earl Spence. So they will be able to counter Danny off his pivots and turns. So these are basic and important fundamentals that's going to be major in victory against Danny, or it's going to be major in victory defeat for Danny against maybe Earl Spence, because Ivan still is unexperienced at the 147 pounds, but Earl Spence will know how to turn and get in. Plus, Earl is long and tall also to be able to reach Danny. So right here, Danny is covering the distance a little better, but he's still having trouble to get a combination off. It's one single punch at a time because of the placement of punches. And Zab is know how to give him angles and stuff like that. So Zab is limiting his work rate. So it's very important for Danny to work on these fundamentals in this fight against Ivan so he can be prepared for Earl Spence. These are important details only the boxing guru can give you. And Danny must truly work on these so he can be successful, so he can remain a king at the 147-pound division against a southpaw. It's very tricky as far as positioning and your angles. Now we're going to take a look at Ivan Redkach in his 147-pound debut against Devin Alexander. If you look closely at Ivan, he doesn't circle as much as Zab Judah, so that's going to be easier for Danny to line him up. If you look at Ivan carefully, he kind of stayed parallel or straight in front of his opponent. If you look at him right now with Devin Alexander, they stand right there. So Ivan does a lot of his slipping punches by upper body movement. He don't use his feet. He just turns. See, Devin steady can reach him and stuff like that. So Ivan got to go back to his 135 pounds fighting where he moved a little bit, where he had a little more agility. He need that against a big puncher as Danny Garcia, because Devin is not a big puncher as Danny. And you don't want to sit there in the pocket where Danny get a chance to load off with right hands and his big, powerful left hook. So that's going to be very critical. And then if you watch Ivan carefully, he need to work on this. Since he's in that straight line center, you can push him back. Once you slip his punch, usually a jab, you can just push him back and he goes straight back. And so you can land punches and work on the inside and smother his work. So it'll be difficult for him to get off. Just like Devin land right there. See how Devin pushing him back to the ropes? See, now you can work. See, Ivan got to go into defensive mode. See, that's the point how you fight Ivan, because he don't give you no circular movement, and that's very critical. See how Devin pushing him up against the ropes again? Now, see, a heavy puncher, a more physical fighter, going to keep him up against the ropes. So it's going to be very difficult for him to maneuver or do anything at those close quarters. So I'm looking for Ivan them to practice on them. He has Sugar Shane Mosley in his corner. They need to work on this against Danny Garcia, because it's going to be a major in his defeat or him getting knocked out if he don't correct this by January 25th. So Ivan is a type of fighter. He's right in your face, just moving on a straight line path. So I'm looking for Danny to land shots, but I don't want Danny to get comfortable with that. I want him to practice on angles, because this is just a tune-up fight, in my opinion, for him to move up to fight Earl Spence. And Earl Spence is a way more better fighter and a better mover and be able to cut off the ring and stuff like that. So Danny got to use this as a training session for him for his most likely summer debut on pay-per-view against Earl Spence.
Subscribe to me if you want more.